So, why is it that we fear change? I just gave you the first answer, right? It's fear. Now, you look on your note pages. Look on the page where I have the 4 reasons why people resist change. And you'll notice that I wrote fear as an acronym, not as a word. Because as an acronym, fear stands for false expectations appearing real. How many of the things, honestly, how many of the things that we are afraid of or fear actually happened? Anybody? What's it? Very few. Matter of fact, the opposite could very well happen. You could pine on it so much that it would actually become a self-fulfilling prophecy. All right? So when you think about fear, which is a very real reason why we resist change, is it a real expectation or is it just appearing real to you? It's an interesting quote by Rudyard Kipling, the author. Of all the liars in the world, sometimes the worst are your own fears. So what does that mean? Anybody? What does that mean? Right. You know, our fears may be lies or liars. All right? Now, I'm not saying that there are real things to be afraid of in the world. I'm not espousing that, or I'm not suggesting that. But what I am suggesting is look real hard at why you're not changing, if you're not changing, and look at what you're afraid of. Are you afraid of the economy? Okay. I start every day with an affirmation that says, I refuse to participate in the recession. That's how I start every day. Because what does that do for me?
That's your mind.
Exactly. Puts my mind right to say, yeah, I know there's a recession out there. You know, quarterly, I look at my bank statement, I say, yep, there's a recession, sure enough. But every day, as a business owner, going out and running my business, growing my business, every day I start off with that affirmation. So it alleviates, it prevents me from being afraid of anything as I start my day. Yes, Mike?
Saying that, does that help you get past the noise?
It does. It does. Another, it's just me personally, and you know, I'm not trying to impose one way or the other, but I have not watched network news in the last 18 years, and counting. Why? Why watch a bunch of sound bites that'll do nothing but depress you, knowing full well that the motto of the media is, if it bleeds, it leads? Why would you do that to yourself? So I just don't. So yes, it does. It helps me get through the media. I figure it takes at least a little bit of talent to write something about what's going on so I don't have to watch it on network news and get caught up in all the sound bites. All right, that's just me personally. Again, I'm not challenging your own particular sources of information and knowledge, but that helps me just stay positive in what I'm doing. So it helps me get past the fear. Okay, so the second one is ego. Interesting. We're all business owners. We're all the kings and queens of our castle and our business. We all, you know, we're all running the show. So we have a little bit of ego going on here. But one of the challenges with change is if I have to change, then what I was doing was wrong. If what I have to do is right, then what I was doing is wrong. All right? Make sense? No, it doesn't really, but it doesn't make sense. Exactly, exactly. So why do we fall into this trap? Why do you suppose?
Feel embarrassed. Like, for whatever reason, if they have to make a change and they feel like they've failed or fallen short, they're embarrassed by that.
Sure.
In a lot of circles.
Because they get to a point that maybe they're no longer relevant. Maybe they're behind the times. I mean, how many conversations have we seen just in my dealings with the chamber where you get a baby boomer arguing with a millennial, a Gen Y, over anything, you know, everything. Yeah, you know, over style, you know, over how to. Every generation brings something to the table as far as business is concerned. But what the millennials do and how the millennials do what they do in business is different than the way boomers do it. Sorry, I'm not pointing to you, Tom, but you're obviously a boomer. So just that simple thing, sometimes ego gets in the way. Well, the millennials are saying, well, hey, you're yesterday's news. You don't know what you're talking about. And the boomers are saying, hey, I've been around the block a few times. You've been in the business world all day. You don't know what you're talking about. So there's these egos pushing and pulling at each other. And because of the way the world changes so fast, quite frankly, if they keep it up, both of them will be, behind the 8 ball. All right? So ego is a challenge for us. One of my favorites, because I teach a specific course just on managing conflict in the workplace at Keller Graduate School. Conflict avoidance. Studies suggest that 75% of you in this room, when faced with a challenge, will flee. Will leave the room, stop talking, whatever it is you got to do to avoid that conflict. Up to 75%. Or 3/4 of you in this room would probably do that if faced with a fight or flight decision. All right? So what is change? Almost by definition. It's conflict, right? It's conflict. It creates oh no, what do I do now? So you have that conflict going, and if your first reaction is to flee anyway, no matter what, how's that help your ability to deal with change? Oh, it doesn't. It just spirals down here from there. Once you avoid the first time, very few can actually recover from that, and they just keep avoiding, and it really gets into a death spiral. So how do we get past that, though? If 75% of us are like that naturally, how do we overcome that? And you've actually hit the nail on the head. The cure for conflict is communication. Absolutely. Now, actually, more correctly, the cure for conflict is effective communication. All right? What is effective communication? Well, yes, exactly right. You have to, both the sender and receiver of any communication have to be in the same context. All right? And if one person's going for position and the other person's going for growth or something maybe a little more tangible or intangible, then it makes it very difficult to deal with. All right? So conflict, ask yourself, the next time you run into a conflict at work or a conflict at home, I mean, it doesn't really matter. Just kind of, now that you've heard me say this or heard this conversation, how are you going to deal with that? Are you standing there, physically there, but mentally avoiding? Or are you physically and mentally both, trying to face up to it, not necessarily espousing, fight, but still deal with it. All right? And the last one is lack of purpose. We've all heard the phrase, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. Anybody not heard that? Anybody remember where it comes from? Alice in Wonderland, the Cheshire Cat, said that. The second guess is usually Yogi Berra, because he usually comes up with those isms that sound a lot like that. But no, it comes from Alice in Wonderland. The Cheshire Cat told Alice, well, where do you want to go? Well, I don't know. Well, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. If you don't have a purpose in your business or in your life or in just what you're doing day to day, if it has no purpose, any road will get you there. And what happens if you don't like the choice? If any road takes you there and you end up on any road and it takes you somewhere, what do you do when you don't like the choice? Define your direction. What direction are you going? All right? What direction do you want to go? Do you know? I always ask clients or students, or it's usually around something like defining your culture or your purpose. Things that are less tangible than what is your revenue projection or some hard number. So how would you explain that to your grandmother? And I say that because most times that I have to explain to my grandmother, I have to use single-syllable words. So it forces you to say, well, how would you explain it to your grandmother? How would you explain your purpose? It's a rhetorical question. So just, what is your purpose? Here's a way to get you prompted. So I'm going to throw a nugget out here for you to think about. Write down on your piece of paper where you're taking notes. I live to serve by, that's you, Mike. I live to serve by blank, ing, blank. How would you fill in the blanks? Again, rhetorical, think about it, just something to think about as either a business owner or how you establish your purpose for your business or for you. Once you have that, change is a no-brainer for you. Change is no problem because now you know all roads lead to whatever by blank, ing, blank. Once that's defined for you, away you go. I always use the, recently I've used the example of the Indianapolis Colts. What is their purpose? And I am a Colts fan, I will shamelessly admit that. But what was their purpose this year? No. Wrong. To go and win the Super Bowl. So when they had a chance at an undefeated season, what did they do? They gave it up because it ran counter to their purpose, which was to get into and win the Super Bowl. All right? And of course, it had to do with keeping, having healthy players for the playoffs. So a simple example, but it's a very real example in our business. Are we getting sidetracked by those things, that undefeated season, that glory that comes with being only one of 3 undefeated 16-0 teams? Or do we lose focus, or do we stay focused on our purpose and continue to march towards that end which we've established for ourselves? That's how you deal with change. Because with a purpose, now you can drive change. Are you with me so far? Any questions on how you might or might not apply this to your business?